This is simply the best Barbarian build in Diablo 4, crushing tier 150's post-patch. It's obviously the King Pig, aka Kim Jong-un, aka Tofu Mord's amazing Flayer build. I chatted the man up to bring you this build, so you too can start blasting the highest of pits. You'll find his info in the description, so make sure to show him some love and follow his shit. Alright, let's start right off with talking about how the build works. It's a pure bleed build, meaning there's no of that berserk ripping shenanigans going on. Instead, it's Flay along with Rupture doing the work. This means that Flay is the cause of all the bleeds, and Rupture is used to explode all of that big damn upon your enemies. Okay, but how does it scale damage? Because Flay has always been a dogshit skill. What has changed? Well, damn my man, it's due to tempering along with the Gushing Wounds passive. By tempering Flay duration on weapons, you're allowing yourself to stack up a shit ton of bleeds. This bleeding then scales via the Gushing Wounds key passive when you're stacking up crit chance and crit damage, allowing you to deal absurd amounts of damage. On top of that, the bleeding scales even further via hemorrhage whenever you stack up vulnerable damage. Alright, that sounds pretty cool. But I'm not convinced about the damage just yet, so there must be something else. And you're goddamn right, you beautiful human. Because considering Flay is a basic skill, we can utilize all of the yummy basic skill aspects that are in the game. These aspects just flat out quadruples the damage of Flay, and is yet another reason that Flay is such an amazing skill for bleed damage compared to Rend, for example. Okay, and what about the billions upon billions of burst damage that we're seeing? Where the hell is that coming from? Well, damn my man, that's Rupture, obviously. Kim Jong-un is rather clever with his Rupture usage here. As you may know, Rupture typically removes all bleeding effects from enemies. This is not the case if you're using the Rupture aspect, however, which he benefits from on the bosses. On the Trash, however, he just keeps stacking up enemies with Steel Grasp, along with splashing all over them with Rupture spamming. This AoE damage scales via Strength, meaning that Strength becomes rather damn important for Trash clearing. Stacking enemies via Steel Grasp also has the added benefit of applying Vulnerable for big damn. Now Rupture does however have a cooldown, so how does he reset that one? Well, damn my man, there's three main ways: the Hectic aspect, Rage of Haragath, and the Martial Glyph. When all of these things are combined, you are allowing yourself to spam Rupture with ease. Alright, I think it's time. Time to check out the hecking gear and aspects. Obviously, I have the ideal planner here on Mobalytics that you can use, and it's called the Tofu Flayer. Starting off with the helmet, you're going to look for a Shako. This is not a make or break for this build, but it's extremely strong as we're actually using skills LMAO. Try to get cooldown reduction masterworked and you're Gucci. For chest, you're grabbing Rage of Haragath. This is to easily reset your cooldowns as you're busting bleeds all over your enemies. For masterworking, the only useful stat is the damage reduction, so definitely prioritize that one. And now we have some actual interesting stuff. If you've seen any of my previous bleed variant builds, we were rocking a roughly 1-to-10 ratio for crit and vulnerable. Since we don't rely as much on crits in this build, we're going to stack more vulnerable damage than in other builds. Mr. Tofu Mord has however made this real easy for you. You simply slap on vulnerable damage on every piece, and then you temper crit on all of them. Easy, huh? Damn right. To temper crit, however, you need to make a rogue character. Other than that, you're going to prioritize crit chance here, followed by attack speed and vulnerable damage. And for aspect, you're grabbing the Rupture aspect. And for chest, you're looking for as many Flay ranks as possible. This is also where you sort out the armor cap along with some of the resistances. For aspect, the Iron Warrior is goated as fuck, granting a whopping 35% damage reduction. For boots, this is what you're looking for: Warcry ranks are massive to reduce its cooldown and grant you more big dam. He's also sorting out the remaining of his resistances here. It's also possible to grab one single resistance on the armor and just socket whatever resistances you need. Just get that shit capped, my man. I do, however, recommend grabbing some more movement speed in case you're planning on doing anything other than being a fucking sloth. And then we have the good stuff. Hell yeah, it's the Big Daddy Hammer. Tempering Flay duration is insanely goated to get that bleeding stacked up to insane amounts. You'll also temper and get the same stats on all your weapons, but you'll focus on masterworking the crit damage, since, well, the Tofu Flayer has done his homework and did some calculations. Overall, masterworking crit is the best in the pit, while Flay duration is superior only for bossing. You're also going to smack on the edging master here, as 40% big dam is pretty massive for both your Flay and Rupture. You then want the inner calm aspect along with the rapid aspect on the one-handers and Moonrise on the other two-handed for massive DPS. You'll also try to grab a polearm and use the two-handed axe expertise for the maximum amount of damage. And finally, the jewelry. For the amulet, there are 3 stats that are absolutely bonkers: heavy-handed, crit chance, and boner ranks. These are far the best for any bleed build, but definitely try to prioritize heavy-handed and crit chance here. Having an insane amulet can double your DPS with ease, so start swiping, my man. You also want the adaptability aspect for a whopping 120% big dam. For the rings, you're looking to temper berserking damage and Warcry cooldown reduction. The berserking can, however, be on any items, but you need 300% to gain the full Paragon benefits. Also imprint the Bold Chieftain's aspect and the Conceited aspect, and you're good to go. Good to go to the fucking skill tree that is, because that's all the gear and aspects. Nicely done, my friends. Here we drop a wet fart on the basic skills. No, wait, we're actually using them in this one. Alright. Max out Flay along with Enhanced Flay for vulnerable on bosses and Battle Flay for more damage. Then tell the core skills to eat shit and pick up all the defensives here along with Tactical Iron Skin. This is your main source of healing in this build, so it's insanely important. Warcry is your main source of berserking in this build, so you'll max that shit out, and also grab Mighty Warcry since this is your only source of Fortify. You also grab a few passives here for more shouts and damage reduction. Next, you have all of these yummy damage passives. Grab them all because you want big dam. Rupture along with Enhanced Rupture is important for AEOE clearing, and Warrior's Rupture grants a massive 40% attack speed. You also have Steel Grasp here, which is used to gather up enemies, along with granting you vulnerable on large packs of enemies. After that, you grab the most important passive in this build, Heavy-Handed. This scales your crit damage like crazy and is definitely a must-have. And finally, the key passive. Gushing Wounds is what this build is all about, and is why you want as much crit chance and crit damage as possible. As you're always overpowering with your Rupture, you're also utilizing the AoE damage from this one whenever you're killing packs of enemies, which is pretty dank. Well, damn, we managed to clear the skill tree. Let's head straight on over to the Paragon board now. This thing is a piece of art. And let me tell you, if North Korea puts anywhere close to the effort put into this Paragon board for their nuclear warheads, then we are in big trouble. In any way, start out with the Wrath Glyph for the big crit damage it provides. You then want to go to the Carnage board for the attack speed, along with Socketing Revenge. This is a glyph that I have been wanting to use for a long time, seeing as it provides 8% damage to anyone that attacks you. The problem, though, is that most builds doesn't utilize Thorns, but we are grabbing a bit of Thorns in Rage of Harrogath in this build, and it's smart because it boosts the damage while berserking along with damage reduction here to more easily cap out the Blood Rage node, which is up next. You also have a bunch of damage while berserking nodes here, and you want to Socket Might for the additional damage. After that, you go up to the Decimator Legendary node, which grants 20% Big Dam, and Socket Marshal. Having it here grants both damage reduction along with vulnerable damage, which is neat. Up here is also where you find Hemorrhage, which in this build doubles your bleeding damage. You do, however, want this one last, as the only rare node we are using here is rather shit. So for the 5th board, you'll instead head on over to the Warbringer board and socket the Executioner glyph, as you'll be looking to use a polearm. Well, goddamn, that's the Paragons dealt with. And you know what time it is now? Hell yeah, it's time to get hecking good and learn how to game. How you play depends a lot on whether you are killing packs of enemies or if you're ripping the boss a new asshole. For clearing packs of enemies, you're looking to gather up all of them via Steel Grasp. You want to gather up the biggest pack of enemies the world has ever seen and explode them via Rupture spamming. Whenever Rupture is on cooldown, you spam some Flay. When it comes to the other skills, you're basically using them on cooldown, meaning whenever they're up, you press that shit real good, and that's the pack clearing. And for bossing, you may take a bit of sedative for this one because it's mainly about holding down the Flay button. Warcry will be used on cooldown, and you can use Iron Skin and Challenging Shout when needed. Steel Grasp can, however, eat shit, as you're already solving vulnerable on single target without it. The only real thing you need to keep track of is when to Rupture. And in case you're wondering what the hell that beeping sound is, that's not me microwaving noodles. That's the Tofu Flayer's way of keeping track of his Rupture. As he's using the Rupture aspect, you should be rupturing whenever that aspect is off cooldown. And how the hell do you know that? Well, damn, my man, the Rupture button changes its icon. So every 25 seconds, you're going to see this change in the icon and press it. Pretty easy, huh? Yeah. Now go show the Tofu Flayer a bit of love, and I'll see you in Pit Tier 150 gazillion.